Hello and welcome to the Certificate in Environmental Management, brought to you by the Southland Institute of Technology. What exactly is Bokashi? Later in the show we take a look. Also, we're at the Southland Museum to find out how to breed the Tuatara. But for now, it's off to Lime Hill School to find out how some students are reinventing the way they take their lunch to school.
Hi, I'm Kate.
And I'm Olivia. And we're KO Packaging.
KO Packaging means knockout packets and Kate and Olivia.
Every year we do cross country and we train up and down the stream next to the school. We would notice that there was a lot of rubbish in the stream.
So this year for social studies we decided to try and get rid of some of the rubbish by knocking out packets from our school.
All the rubbish is coming from school because at playtime we just go out to the paddock and everything and eat while we're playing. And so when we're finished we just put all the rubbish in our pockets and it was flying out into the stream.
We decided to try and get rid of the rubbish by creating a solution. So that's when we wrote to GLAD
To see if they could help us on our way to making our school packet free.
if they could give us some of their items. So instead of buying individually wrapped foods, they could buy in bulk and put their food in the reusable bags.
The leader asked if they would like to sponsor us and give each family some of these, and we told them all about our project and what we're doing. Well, our teacher gave us the envelope and Kate and I didn't realise who it was from, and so I opened it up and we saw that it was from Glad and we were really excited to see what he would say.
And they replied.
They said that we were doing a really great job and they thought that our project was a really good idea, and they said that they would sponsor us.
I thought we were really impressed with what we were trying to do, and they thought it was a great idea and they would be pretty happy to support it.
He said that he would love to sponsor us, and he thought that our idea was really good. It was about the same time as we got the letter.
Well, our teacher, Mrs. Smith, said that a parcel had arrived for us.
And so we went down and we were really excited because they're quite big parcels. And when we opened them to see that it was the sponsors that we asked for, we were really excited because we could make one more step and knock out packets.
And they sent 110 Gladware containers, snaplock bags and zip slide bags. We were just really pleased that they'd actually considered our campaign to be a good idea.
Well, we wrote all of the family names on the items and gave them out so that the families could use them.
And we hope they'd buy in bulk and use them instead of buying the individually wrapped foods.
Well, we gave them out assembly to each family.
They weren't too sure at first, but then once they got into the routine of using them, they thought it was a great idea as well.
And out of one class, we had 18 out of 20 kids started using them within the first week.
I think they think it's a great idea because there isn't so much rubbish around in the fields and in the stream, so it's a lot better for the environment.
Well, we go around each classroom every once in a while to remind them that they need to use the gladware things.
We've written to other schools in Southland asking them if they'd like us to come and present.
To see if they'd become a knockout school, packet-free school as well.
We presented our idea to the Department of Conservation and the Southland District Council and Environment Southland. What we hope to do is reduce all the packets at our school and hopefully knock them out.
Or if we knock out packets now, it'll mean that'll be a better future for us.
It's a dirty topic, but next we check out Bokashi composting. Okay Lisa, what do we have here in these buckets?
Basically we're looking at the Bokashi system, and it's a very effective system for composting your kitchen food scraps, up to 50% faster than regular composting, and it works on the principle of fermentation using microorganisms. This mixture is actually full of microorganisms that are just waiting to be activated when you put them on your food scraps. They get a little bit moist and they come to life, and they help to break down your food and create compost which is really healthy and full of good bugs for your garden, for your plants.
And what do we have inside?
Basically the system uses 2 buckets. We've got one bucket which nests inside the other. The top bucket has holes, if we can get it off. It's got holes in the bottom of the bucket, and you're putting your food scraps in this top one, and as they break down they actually release their moisture, so you've got a runoff of liquid into the bottom one, which in the top you will create useful fertiliser, useful compost for your garden. In the bottom you're actually the juice you can use as a liquid fertiliser. You can dilute it down 1 to 100, or pour the straight juice into your drains to clear your drains.
Cool. How handy. So as you're working away at home, you can put all your scraps in here. Any scraps? What can't you put in?
Basically anything. The only things that you really want to leave out are the runny things, liquid. You wouldn't want to pour a can of soup in there, or milk, oils. You don't want to put any oils in there. But basically anything else. You probably wouldn't put large bones or anything like that in there, but meat, fish, raw or cooked, you can put in there is fine. Yeah, basically just about anything that you would, food that you'd prepare in your kitchen that you would have scraps, just put them in.
Yep. And can you keep it anywhere? Can you have it right beside your bin inside a cupboard or whatever, and keep going?
Yeah, it's absolutely ideal for that, because the fermentation requires a wee bit of warmth. It's good to have it inside and somewhere warm, in your kitchen cupboard or in the bottom of your hot water cupboard, which is quite handy because it means it's right there when you're preparing a meal and you want to put the scraps straight in. You can just take the lid off, have it there beside you when you're chopping up your veggies, and put the scraps straight in.
And with the product here, how often do you have to put this in?
Basically every time you're adding a layer of food scraps, you want to put a handful in the bucket if you've got a bigger layer, you might want to put a more generous handful. Smaller layer, smaller handful. If you've got meat or cheese, you might want to add a wee bit more, because it just needs a wee bit more to break down the proteins in the meat and in the cheese. Yeah. So basically, you'd add a layer of food scraps and then just put a sprinkle in, and you want to start with a sprinkle too. You want to put a sprinkle in the bottom to start off with. But this one here actually has my current work in progress. Yeah, basically you've got the food scraps in there, and every layer I've added, every time I've prepared a meal basically and put food scraps in, I've put a layer of this, always, you know, a sprinkle, and yeah, that's all you need, and it actually lasts quite a long time because you're not using heaps at once. Yeah.
So is this breaking down whilst it's being filled? What happens when it gets to the top? Is it ready to be put out in the garden?
Basically, once you've filled it up, you want to leave it in the nice warm spot that you've got it in for say about 1 to 2 weeks, and then basically take it out, dig little holes in your garden or a trench, and just put it in, and it won't be completely broken down when you're putting it in the garden. It will break down very easily once it gets there, and it will be, say, 3 to 4 weeks, and it would have completely broken down and added a lot of goodness to your soil, and those microbes that are in there will continue to work and benefit your plants.
How is this different to any other kind of composting product or design?
Well, basically, it's the only one that works on the principle of microorganisms. I mean, all composting has some degree of microbe activity, but this has just been really revved up by this bag of mix, and it's very unique in that it's actually speedy, and it's easy, and it's right there in your house, and it won't smell. That's the other thing.
I see here it says reduces odours.
Yeah, basically the only smell that you really get is a sort of a pickly kind of smell, a smell of fermenting product rather than something that's rotting. You know, rotting would smell yuck, but this just smells. I mean, you can sort of smell
yes,
for
I'm with
yourself
yours now, and it's not even smelling.
No, it's quite tolerable, and yeah, I have mine at home in my kitchen cupboard, and it doesn't stink, and if it did, I wouldn't have it there. So yeah, no, it's good. Whereabouts
can people get this product from? Do you have it at the Environment Centre?
Absolutely, they can come in weekdays. We're open weekdays 9 till 4, and they can come in and purchase the kit. We're in the SIT arcade, and we not only sell the complete kits which have a bag of mix in them, we also sell the mix on its own, and that's useful not only for this system, it's actually ideal for this system, but it can also be used on existing compost in existing compost systems, compost bins. Yeah.
So for the complete kit you get the container here and the bag. And
yes, you get the 2 bucket system and the mix, and that's $38.
$38,
yeah,
wow.
And the mix on its own, you're looking at $6 for that, which is good value because it lasts a long time.
Of course, the container you could keep reusing, and then you just have to top up $6 a bag.
Absolutely, yeah. That's your initial investment, and yeah, $6 to stock up on the mix.
Yep. And how beneficial is composting for the environment?
Very beneficial. Basically, you're eliminating waste. I mean, when people send their green waste and their food scraps to the landfill, it doesn't break down properly. It's not in an environment where it can break down properly, and it's also not being made use of because it's a really valuable resource. It doesn't need to be waste. It can be really valuable fertiliser or compost, and
it's so good for the garden too.
It is, and it's meaning that you're not having to go out and buy expensive artificial fertilisers, which actually aren't as good.
Right, well, I'll let you get back to the Environment Centre, and thank you so much for speaking with us today, Lisa.
Thanks, not a problem.
Cheers. Southland is known for its Tuatara breeding. Now we head inside the museum to find some little critters a bit more athletic than this guy. Lindsay, who do we have here with us today?
Well, this fellow hasn't actually got a name, but he's a 10-year-old, and his dad's Albert. And although I haven't looked up the data, but I think his mum's probably Mildred. Albert, Lucy and Mildred have produced over 120 offspring since the breeding program started back in 1986. So,
can you please tell me a bit more about the breeding program?
Well, we started off here. The breeding's a bit of a bonus for the institution because firstly we wanted to have Tuatara for public display. But in seeing that Tuatara hardly ever, if not actually breed in captivity, there's lots of challenges there for us. And I started here as a schoolboy and I thought, well, I want to be able to breed these fellas and sort of secure the species and maybe have animal surplus to put back into the wild. And before we even had the eggs, we had issues with the internal affairs that used to be back then. And they'd only allow one pair of animals per institution. So if a zoo wanted Tuatara, they'd only get 2, a male and a female.
Wow.
And as I learnt, Tuatara lived for a long time. And being a farm boy, for breeding you need genetic sort of jealousy. And just having one male with a female I didn't think was going to work. And it wasn't working and hadn't worked. And no one really had any answers for the lack of breeding. And I managed to convince the Internal Affairs to let us have another pair of Tuatara, thinking that if you're going to live for 200 or 300 years and there's no threat to genetic continuance, why waste your energy breeding when there's no challenge to your genetics? So I theorised that another boy would certainly get some action going. And I was actually right. In 1980 we got Albert, and he and Henry, who I was trying to breed from initially, were incredibly jealous of one another. I'm not sure what Henry's jealousy was all over, but he used to attack Albert as well as the other females. But Albert more than proved himself as a very successful stud. And Albert had 2 adult females, Lucy and Mildred. And when we first produced the eggs, we didn't know the temperature or the moisture is required, so it was all trial and error. So from about a dozen eggs, we'd break them up into different wee containers. And we learnt that they need about 80% moisture in the soil. If the soil you put them in is too dry, they're soft tissued eggs, they're not hard shelled like a bird's egg. So if you have the medium too dry, that sucks the moisture out of the egg and they can die. And we also learned if the moisture is too wet, just prior to hatching, the embryo pulls moisture out of the soil and can actually drown himself in the egg. So it's amazing they actually survive in nature when you consider how crucial the hatching and incubating environment actually is. So these are all things we learnt initially, and we've become very successful at breeding the common species. And because of the success, Victoria University have done a lot of research as well, and they've sort of found on Brothers Island, North Brothers Island, that there's a species of Tuatara quite a bit different than all the other islands. And it's actually called Sphenodon gunthrii, whereas the common species is called Sphenodon punctatus, Latin names. But to you, anyone walking off the street, they all look alike.
Yeah. How many do you have here at the moment?
I've got 30 here at the moment, but I did have as many as 90 at one stage.
Wow.
But about 6 or 8 years ago, because we had so many, we moved some of them along. There's quite a large demand in other New Zealand zoos to have Tuatara on display. And because of the successful breeding, it's taken the pressure off to have to take animals from the wild natural habitats. So we can breed animals here in Southland and supply other zoos around New Zealand. And the next project will be possibly looking at a sanctuary or even a southern island down here. I'm working with local iwi, the Aparima Runaka. Are quite keen to see if they have an island that would be suitable for Tuatara to be held, just to see if they would live and survive, and whether there's enough food on the island, and monitor the climate at the same time.
So with the eggs, you must have to take them away and store them somewhere. You can't just leave them out here?
I've sort of been a bit greedy that way. I probably don't have to. Initially, we're so keen to ensure that we did get breeding success. We even actually induced them at the start when we would take them to the local vets, and the vet would x-ray them. They're very seasonal, so in October, September, October, if you x-ray females, if there's eggs in their belly, they show up on x-rays. So once you know and identify a female who's actually got eggs, I keep a close eye on her, and they go digging all around the place looking for the right spot to lay their eggs. Some of the universities are a wee bit concerned with our so-called global warming. I don't like that word, but I prefer to call it interglacial. They're saying one thing we have learnt with incubating Tuatara, in a controlled incubator, the temperature is constant, and we've chosen different temperature ranges. And from this, we've identified that the actual sex of a Tuatara is determined by the temperature that you incubate them at.
Oh, really?
For example, if you've got, say, 22 degrees Celsius constant throughout the whole incubation, 90% of the Tuatara will be boys.
Wow.
And if you take, say, 18 degrees Celsius constant, 90% will be females.
Yeah.
And at the moment, Victoria University are doing a research to identify at what temperature and at what stage of the embryo's development does it choose to be a boy or a girl. So this is some data gathering that Victoria's working on. What the females do, from my experience, they dig all these little holes and they're looking for they dig a hole in so far, they put the nose into the hole, they're sniffing and smelling, they're sensing for heat and moisture. And at the moment, they're looking for the hottest sunny spots they can in the enclosure. I believe as things warm up, they'll choose a less hot spot. They know what they need, so they'll just choose it accordingly. Because they've been around for millions of years. We've had ice age, several ice ages in the time that they've actually survived, and they're still here today. So I personally don't have a lot of fear that this so-called global warming will be a risk to the Tuatara.
And how long can they live for?
Nobody really knows. But this is that size. This is I don't know whether it's a boy or girl. I'm guessing it's possibly a boy. I've got my oldest animals coming up 22 years old now, and every 6 months part of my job is I catch all the Tuatara, the whole lot, and that can be a challenge because the little rascals can dig and get off to Chernobyl, and I try and have controlled burrows so I can locate them all. But data gathered, measuring every 6 months, I reckon it's going to take 60, if not 70 years for a male Tuatara to be fully grown.
Wow.
So I use Henry as an example. Henry arrived here in 1970. He showed no growth in his snout vent length when he arrived. So he's a fully grown male from the wild, at least 70 years old, could have been older when he arrived here 37 years ago.
He's amazing, isn't
So
he?
that is minimum age. I reckon they'll probably go 200-300 years.
With the breeding, it's not just important to look after the eggs, but obviously to also look after the Tuataras.
Absolutely, yes, yeah. The big secret with breeding is the fact I'm here all the time. I don't have dozens of other animals. In zoo situations, keepers have several animals to look after, and they don't get to have dedicated time with them. I'm forever, although I do all the photographic conservation work here, I'm forever, about probably every hour, 2 hours, I get up and I'm checking to see who's living where, who's out. And I build up a rapport with where each animal is, and okay, you're looking hungry, I'll feed that one, and it's all that sort of close contact and knowing what they're all up to that's been part of the success.
And obviously it's working very well.
Yes, although I've had my challenges, I tell you. For several years, in 1990 when we redeveloped the museum, I wanted the husbandry manual for Tuataras is to try and be outdoors, but I knew Southland's climate was too cold based on the outdoor enclosure we built in 1974. Our Tuatara actually hibernated for about 8-9 months of the year. You never saw them, so it's definitely no good for the public to come and see a Tuatara because they're all under the ground sleeping.
Yeah.
So we put a roof on that enclosure, and the warmth, that was part of another learning curve, was knowing that our climate was too challenging. And so the roof we put on had to be a horticultural roof, and the specification said let UV through for photosynthesis, so I thought that would be good enough for the Tuatara. But it wasn't long before I realised there was no UV getting through that roof, and all the animals were becoming vitamin D deficient. My egg quality was poor. The eggs they're laying eggs and producing all right, but the eggs were not strong enough to go full development and hatch out of the eggs. And I had tearing my hair out trying to solve these problems. I was introducing UV bulbs. I actually managed to save Tuatara by injecting liquid calcium into the embryos just to ensure, and they were actually surviving from doing that. Whereas if I didn't inject them the calcium, they would fail to hatch at all. Just about coming up 2 years now, I got a local Southland person donated some money to buy the special acrylic that's produced in Germany that lets all the UV through. And the IRT and the Community Trust came to the party, and they paid for the contractors to put the aluminium and install it all. So we're coming into the second year of this new roof, and I'm really excited to see, hopefully we should start seeing the results now, because the eggs in the last 2 years have been formed while they're good quality roof. So I'm hoping that there's been lots of UV, vitamin D, and hopefully good calcium uptake in the eggs to ensure that they will actually survive.
Yeah. And Southland is doing very well for itself too, isn't it?
Oh, very much. Yeah, we're the world's leading institution for the breeding. And even as far as aesthetics, even though we did this in 1990, there's nowhere else in the world where you could actually go and see a lush paradise natural habitat of Tuatara and see 15, 20 animals on a good fine afternoon.
Well, thank you so much for sharing with us today, Lindsay. And should we put this wee one back in its place?
We sure can. He's been a good boy, hasn't he?
Thanks for joining us today. We hope you've enjoyed the show. If you would like more information on the Certificate in Environmental Management, please call 0800 Sit to Learn. We'll see you next time.